See, Mike.
Bill's speechless.
Well,
Bill's speechless.
Sandy, congratulations. I
Thank you.
cannot think of anyone more deserving, and anyone that's going to do about as good a job as what you will do.
Well, I appreciate that. Actually, it wasn't something that I was seeking by any means. Never was on my radar. It certainly wasn't on my bucket list of retirement things to do. But I did say to Chief Judge McLaughlin, if I'm your best applicant, then I'm going to do the job to my best of my ability. And if I'm not, I totally understand. And, let's do what's best for the community. And this is actually 2 weeks to the day since this started. 2 weeks ago, an application was due by 5 o'clock. I put it in with the thought that I was going to get information on Monday that would cause me to withdraw it. And that didn't happen. The information came back totally opposite of what I thought it was going to be. And it just became clearer and clearer as each objection I had to moving forward in this manner was not supposed to be, because it was addressed. And so it was just a week ago I had a phone interview, and last Friday morning the appointment was offered.
And you had some other folks, very good applicants that applied as well. So it's more credit to you for competing with very qualified individuals and coming out on top.
Well, I have to say I have no idea who applied, and I don't really need to know who applied. I'm sure they all were wonderful people, but I don't know any of those names. And sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, I think things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Exactly.
When do you go to Magistrate boot camp, Sandy?
I came back last night.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, how was it?
I'm booted.
You done been booted.
I've done been booted.
Yeah, there's a big orange wheel on you right now. Yeah.
There is.
So how does that work? What kind of things do you learn?
I think you get a good overview of the types of cases that'll come before you, and of course the emphasis being on the law and the facts that are presented in front of you. You know, making your decisions based on those facts and not any other information you may have or any supposition. So it was thorough, and it was it seems like a whirlwind. Less than 2 weeks ago, this wasn't a thought in my head, and now I've had some training, and June 2nd I'll be sworn in and assume duties. But
do you have someone who oversees you for a while, or did you just go right in solo on your own as a magistrate?
Well, I did some shadowing yesterday in Putnam County, and I certainly will do some shadowing here in Berkeley County. And but there are really good forms that I'll be using, and there's certainly going to be a pattern of cases you see more often than others, and so you'll become familiar with that. But I'm a very detail-oriented person.
We've noticed.
As you know. Yeah. Yes. So because of that, I've already got little checklists for myself to make sure I don't leave anything out, with the emphasis being on ensuring that somebody receives their due process and that the law is followed, and that I base my decisions on the information I'm given.
Do you have to step away from any of the other things that you've been doing or serving on?
So far, and there's some things I'm going to be getting a judicial opinion on, or ask, the ethics committee if they see an issue or concern. I am going to be stepping down from quite a few boards, and not necessarily because the judicial system thinks there'd be a conflict, because most of the boards I'm on, I would never see in front of myself in a courtroom situation. But this is how my mind works. And people that know me know that I'm not on a board to have my name there. I'm on a board because I want to bring value, and I'm going to be at every meeting, and I'm going to be at every fundraiser. So I think from a time perspective, I'm not going to be able to give those boards the time. So there are going to be probably at least 8 or 9 that are going to get my resignation within the next 2 weeks. Still have my support behind the scenes, but I'll have to resign just because I won't be able to give them the time that I feel they deserve, even to just be at a meeting.
Now, you were on something like 22, 24 boards?
When I retired. I've cut that in half. It's about 12 now. But and another a piece that's very critical and important is that as a magistrate, I'm not able to participate in fundraising. So certainly some of the boards I'm on, that's a big piece of it. So there's no point in me continuing to fill a board seat and not be able to help them in that regard. Now, my personal finances are personal. And certainly, Matt Miller doesn't need to be concerned that I'm going to cut my monthly payment to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, for instance. But by the same
I'll
token,
text him back because he
Tell
just
him.
texted me that
Yeah,
question
tell him not
right
to
now.
panic. Yeah,
Funny that-
don't panic, Matt. But it'll look a little different. And ironically, someone mentioned how busy I was going to be, and then I said, "Take a look at my calendar for May and June." They went, "Oh yeah, you're not going to be any busier than you have been. It's just going to be a different busy."
Sure.
But going back very quickly about being introduced, you have a phenomenal support group as magistrates. They're very qualified. They're very professional. They're experienced to the stage. So it's not like you're going into a territory all by yourself. You've got a lot of folks you can look across the room at and get good, solid advice and suggestions. Plus, you've got some phenomenal chief magistrates with Daryl Scholl.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That certainly was a consideration and certainly is a benefit.
Yeah.
They're a great core group of people. And actually something that I mentioned to Chief Judge Laughlin when we were discussing the position, that I felt one of the important factors in a position like this is the cohesiveness and the able to interact and to work with the others that are already in the position. Because, it's a small group, and you're going to be covering each other, and there are life situations that come up, and you just need to make sure that you're able to be supportive of one another and that you have that unity.
Mr. Height.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations. I'm thrilled by this appointment. We've known each other for some time now, and I've always found you to be very fair, and I think you'll make a great magistrate. But like we've already said, you're very, very active in the community, and I'm just wondering, as you come back off of some of those boards, how will that affect the things you've done in the community? You'll still be able to do some things, but I would think that a lot of those boards will suffer by not having someone like yourself on there.
Oh, that's very kind. I hadn't expected that question. To me, it kind of reminds me of parenthood, and that whole empty nest thing. Well, if I haven't prepared those entities to the point that they benefited from my work with them in order to continue to move forward, then I've failed as a board member. It's not about me. It's about the mission and the group and what they're doing. So it would make me really sad if that would impact them negatively from me stepping away from being a formal board member. I would hope, for instance, there's a board that I've been on for 20 years. If I haven't done things to improve that and for them to continue to move forward, and they're a nonprofit, then I feel like I probably have failed as a board member, because it should never be about one person.
Sure.
So I don't see that being something that's going to have an adverse effect on any of those groups. I certainly hope not, because I certainly wouldn't want to have an adverse effect, and I would feel like I'd failed them if that were the case.
One of the other interesting things you said is this wasn't on your bucket list, and I can see that. But you, like I say, you've been very active in the community and even around the state. So I'm surprised somewhat that you didn't ever have any political aspirations. Have you ever thought about something other than magistrate? Maybe magistrate wasn't on your bucket list, but something else maybe.
We're friends, as you said. So I'll tell you, friend to friend, not only was it not on my list, but I used to pray, God, please don't make me get into that world. And he laughed at me just a few days ago and said, here we are. But no, I never did, because I always felt like I could have, and this is something, I don't know if you're familiar with the book that tells you how to pick a word for the year. There's a really great book out. As a matter of fact, I have a copy in my car because I give them to people. I just gave great friend Christy Hadley a copy. And so anyway, the book encourages you once a year to pick a word that's going to be your word for the year. And you can't just go out and, randomly point to a word and that's it. You have to give it some thought. And this year, my word was impact. Now, I also have I have a great friend that you're familiar with, Ashley Horst. Ashley has another group that she'll send me a prayer word once a year that's to be my word to focus in for the year. So my word from Ashley this year is humility. So impact, humility. And when I think about that, it all makes sense now as to why God said, this is what you're going to do now, whether it's on your list or not. Because, I've been around a certain group of people for the last 10, 15 years. Very successful people, businesses doing things to improve our community. But I'm going to be around a different group of people now that need assistance as much as anyone else. And so I think that's a little bit where the humility piece comes in. And the impact is these are people that deserve due process, and they have something that needs to be solved through that system. And, I think sometimes people look at me, and if you haven't known me for 50 or 60 years, you would think, she's not qualified to do that. Well, first thing, I did listen to Daryl when he was on a couple weeks ago about common sense. I have common sense. I'm not going to say a lot of good things about myself, but I have common sense. But my last job, I think one of the reasons I was as successful as I was the ability to keep information confidential.
Sure.
And I think that's a critical part of being a magistrate, that what goes on in my courtroom is nobody else's business except the people in that courtroom. So, that's one aspect. But another aspect, I was looking over my work history, which would probably surprise people if you don't know. My first state job was Department of Health and Human Resources. So, Department of Health and Human Resources, State Tax Department, Department of Employment Security, Workforce West Virginia. I've worked all those positions. Of course, I worked Potomac Edison, Development Authority. I've had a lot of positions over the years that have given me unique knowledge of different pockets of people in our community that could come before me. And I think one of the other attributes that's going to serve me well is, I may have mentioned to you guys in the past that, my big outside activity in college was the debate team. My debate partner was Judge Sally Jackson, and we rarely lost. We were good. So, but I think one of the things that made us so successful was our counselor made us, when you prepare for debates, you have to take the side that you don't agree with. And sometimes that was very difficult in the beginnings, to take a side that I felt very strongly against. But it caused me to research it and to argue for it, even though I was against it. So I think that's another training that I've had that's going to be a good training to have in this setting, because I'm going to be able to hear things that I might not agree with, but I have to look at the whole picture and make a decision based on that.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because up till now, I would say that with a lot of the boards you're on, whether it be community or nonprofit oriented or even government oriented, you've gotten to see a lot of the best part of our community, the best part of our society. And now this is going to be a contrast, because what you're going to see most of the time is not the best part. It's the worst part of our society. How do you transition into that and deal with that?
Well, I guess part of that has to do with my personality, that I've never worked anywhere that I didn't know everybody from the lowest position to the highest position. Knew them by name, knew about their family, checked in on them. That's just who I am. Because to me, people are people. I don't see people as status or what job they have or how much money they have. I just never have, and I'm grateful I don't see people that way. But I also think that, because of the background that I've had with Department of Health and Human Resources, with Workforce West Virginia, I recall, I was just telling someone in Charleston about this. We kind of joked about it, but I said, I used to sometimes have cases when I managed the local workforce office. I'd have unemployment cases of fraud, and I would go to the courthouse to represent our agency. And one particular time I had my case file, but I didn't take my briefcase in. So I'm sitting out in the lobby waiting on this case. And a young gentleman come in, sat down beside me, and started telling me about, how he was guilty. He knew that he had accepted it and shouldn't have. And he could pay it as soon as he received his income tax refund. But, he was going to have to go into court and talk about it and try to convince him that he didn't, not realizing that he was coming up against me. So when they call us to go in, and he realizes, he said, what paper do I sign to pay this back? And I said, that's all I want is restitution. And you're not going to do this again. And he said, yes, ma'am. So I think even the fact that he was comfortable talking to a complete stranger, not knowing that she's the one, hopefully I don't send off the vibes that I'm not approachable or that, anybody can talk to me, because I don't see people as dollar signs or titles or anything like that. I never have.
But Sandy, you described the job earlier in a way that I had not heard it described. We think of the judicial system as being a system of retribution. Someone did something offended society, and society is getting their pound of flesh back at them in some way. You said part of your job was meeting the needs of the individuals in front of you. That's just the opposite twist of what we think about it, but it's also a very important aspect of it as well. You're the first one I've heard that describe it that way. Well,
and along that line, one of the other aspects that I have that I think is going to be, from hearing about what the caseload looks like, how it's broken down. At one point, I had over 25 rental properties. And needless to say, a lot of it, potentially a lot of evictions. I didn't have a lot, but I had a certain number of evictions. But so it's not always a case of somebody being in front of you because it's, a preliminary for kidnapping or, something everything's serious. But it could be a landlord in front of you that needs their need met, that they have someone who's not paid rent for the last year and they need you to help them evict them, that type of thing. So I'm serving the people on the other side.
Yes.
On both sides of the equation. And that's my math background coming out. I apologize for the equation. But, and along that same line, in my previous job, on a pretty regular basis, I would work with Tim at the Day Report Center, and I would go in and talk with them as part of their program as to how to do a resume, how to interview for a job, how do you change, the recidivism rates. And what, the goal for me is not to put as many people as I can behind jail or find them as much as I can possibly find them, although I'm going to do what the law says. But the idea is you don't want it to be repeated. First time a victim, second time you're a volunteer has kind of been my philosophy. So I think that, I'll be able to work in that type of situation.
Yeah, and both aspects are very important, and I'm confident knowing our magistrates all view it kind of the same way you do. But you brought out that point that I'd not heard before, and I was taken by that. The fact you're serving the need of the individual in front of you. You can serve the need several different ways.
Right.
Sandy, what will your schedule be like as a magistrate when you begin on June 2?
Well, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, theoretically. I commented that I've never worked a 9 to 5. That's just not who I am. I work till whatever needs to be done is completed. And then there is a rotation of being on call. So because we have 7 magistrates, my understanding is every 7 weeks you're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Now, there's 7 magistrates. Daryl Scholl's the chief magistrate. But I think that position really is for scheduling. There isn't one magistrate who oversees the others in terms of you ruled one way on this. Why? Does someone do review with you at some point?
Well, there's certainly every case has the appeal process, so anyone can appeal a decision.
Correct, but in terms of someone overseeing your decision.
My understanding is, from what I just came through with training, that Charleston does periodically review those and just offers opinion on how you've responded to particular cases. Or if they start to see a pattern, there might be something that needs some coaching. But if you're following the law and you're using the forms that they've given you, it's pretty much, I won't say cut and dry because it's not, because every situation's different.
How long
you do have good guidelines.
How long is this term?
The term is 4 years, but the position that I'm filling, because it's from a resignation, it requires me to be on the ballot the next time that there is a general election in order to fill the seat. So I'm only in the position until May, And then in May, the voters will vote on who will fill the rest of the term, which it's a 4-year term, so it would be 3 additional years after May.
Will you run?
I'm going to leave that open. I'm going to see if I'm able to make an impact, my word, and I'm able to do things that benefit our community and feel like that's the case, I will. But
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate you coming in.
thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Judge.
Sandy Hamilton, newest magistrate in Berkeley County. We are back with the Friday Five after these.
Regret is just a memory.
Do you have someone in a nursing home, or are you worried about somebody you love going into a nursing home? The law